Hello, hello. I think this is going to be my least watched live stream. So far, I have zero viewers. Let's see. Oh, wow. Hello, Critical Chris fan. You have to keep the volume off. That's okay. Welcome to the live stream. I'm going to wait a little bit, see if anyone else joins. Is that you, Cash? I think I've finally discovered who the Critical Chris fans are. Actually, in 2.0, I feel like that's Julian. Because of the high greeting. Who else is watching? I got 2 viewers. I guess that's it. It's just me and me today. Well, for any future viewers who feel like watching this stream, I would like to announce... Hello, Zach. Welcome to the stream. You guys should just change your name to whatever your actual name is. Because it... Oh, I can add a moderator. That's cool. Well, I had a couple announcements to make today. I was just about to make them, but, I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if the streamers roll in. And then if no one rolls in, I'll make the announcements, and then I will just go on about my business. Make it a news report. So, I've discovered that it's common courtesy to discuss housekeeping for the chat. Be respectful of each other. Try to limit your swearing, your cursing, and all that kind of stuff, because children can view this video, and if there's any reports of the chat or anything like that, then I can get in trouble for that. So try to restrict that a little bit. Hopefully my fans are having fun in Mexico, as we are having fun up here in the Great White North. The Jets are suddenly winning, which is good, I guess. We'll see if we make the playoffs. My wife is falling out of the tub, it seems. Or she dropped something. Who's our third viewer? We got Critical Kiss Fan 1 and 6.7. Do we have anyone else? Or is that me? Nope, that's not me. Always wondered if it counts my own monitoring of the feed as a viewer. All right. Well, I guess I'll get going then. So, some announcements to make. I've started a few shows. I've decided that I'm going to do a few different formats to kind of make it so that my videos are organized in terms of the content and easily trackable if you guys want to go back and watch other videos and stuff. So, actually, I'm going to grab I have a whiteboard for this, so I'm going to go grab it. Just one sec. I'm old school. I still use whiteboards. So my short form content is going to be titled InFocus. I've actually already released my first episode for that. So please make sure to go check that out. It's called InFocus because it's short form. And I will be having a tagline for it. In fact, I've already used it. The tagline is not short enough to be a reel and real enough to not be too short. Just enough to get in, get out, and get on with your day. Just like it sounds, the videos, or the show, I like to call it show because it seems more legit. The content in this show is going to be short, to the point. So I'm going to be covering the news, and it'll be between 7 and 10 minutes long, 5 and 10 minutes long, let's say. And just like it says, it's short enough to not have too great a commitment, but still be able to get a basic understanding of what's going on currently in the news. And because I'm currently working a full-time job on top of doing this, I might not be able to do it every day, but I'm going to do it as much as possible. That way you can stay informed and I can stay engaged and keep up with the news myself. The second format, medium form, is going to be called the Roundup. And it's going to be similar to the short form, wherein I'm not going to be diving too deep into the content. I'm just going to be going over the news of the day. I'm not going to be too critical on what's being said or anything like that. That's going to be saved for my long form videos. This is going to be as organized as possible. So, and it also hopefully increases engagement. Hopefully people don't get deterred because I'm not spending my short videos, reaming on politicians and stuff like that. But I want to present the news as factually as possible. So short form is going to be the news as we see it, brief updates. Medium form is going to be consecutive news reports on days where I don't feel like making 5 or 6 videos, so I'm just going to lump them all together. Similar to what I do with my live stream, but it's going to be shorter format, but it'll still be between, let's say, 15 to 30 minutes. And then my long form videos, which could be anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half, could be 2 hours, who knows. Those ones are going to involve deep dives into my reporting, the things that I've reported on throughout the week, my comments on them, my analysis on them, going over the actual data that's being presented. And we're going to be finding out the truth behind what's being said. And that falls in line with the fourth video the fourth show that I'll be putting out, which will be Fact Check Fridays. Whether or not they actually land on Fridays, actually I'll probably make an effort for them to land on Fridays consistently. Maybe not every Friday, but Fridays. What that show will be based on is just like it sounds. I'm going to go over all the content, all the news reports, maybe not everything because I don't know if I'll have time for it, maybe one day if I'm able to commit more time to this in the future, but to start, I'm going to do as much content as possible. I'm going to be going over every claim that's made from either side of the aisle, whoever's making the claim, and I'm going to be presenting the actual data behind what they're saying. Now, a lot of what's said has partial truths. So someone might make a claim and one side of the aisle might be like, well, that's not true. This is the actual truth. When in reality, there's a partial truth to it. And I'll try my best to make sure that that's being presented fairly. So I'm not going to say something's untrue, and I'm not going to definitively say that it is true. If they present a stat and that stat has some truth in it, or truth to it, then I'm going to make that be known. If it's completely false, I'll be making that known. And if it is 100% true, to the best of my knowledge, that will be stated as well. Now, there's always the opportunity for me to make amendments as per my website and videos. So if anyone discovers that something that I claim is absolutely true turns out to not be absolutely true, feel free to reach out to me on my website or leave a comment in the video, and I will put an amendment on the website. If you guys have watched my previous live, is www.criticalchris.com. I've also just started an Instagram page which has nothing on it. There's also my X page, which is... What is my X page? Profile. It's at CriticalChris11. That's because Critical Chris was taken by an individual who signed up 10 years ago and has not used their account since. So I am number 11, which is my hockey number, which is why I chose that number. And then it's just my name, which you can see it on the X page. I don't know if I'm going to keep it as my name because I don't know if I want my full name. Actually, I don't really care. It's Christopher Allard. Come and find me if you want to find me. What else? So Fact Check Friday. Got that. Oh, and then this is probably of no interest to you who are here for politics, but I'm thinking about doing another series with a friend of mine, or with anyone, honestly, who wants to partake. But that series is going to be not political in nature at all, but it's going to be something that I'm very passionate about, and that is apologetics and my faith. And that one will be titled Beers and Bibles, if it ends up happening. I would love for that to happen because that's probably the topic that I am most passionate about and most interested in. I spend most of my reading and most of my research on that, and most of my emotions and time on that. So that'll be hopefully one day a show that I will be starting as well. And for those of you who are completely not interested in that, I would love for you to take a gander so you can see what my faith is all about. No harm in taking a look. But if you're not interested, there's still the political channels. And they will all be separate, and they'll all be very easy to discern from each other. And I will have each one separated into specific playlists for each show. So think of this as a channel, like a TV channel. And on that channel are shows. And each show will be separate, distinct, but connected because I am the owner of the channel, and I will be hosting all the shows to begin with at the very least, and then most of the shows in over time if this ever grows. So I think that's everything in terms of updates, news updates. So yeah, I got my social media, website's up and ready. I'm starting to put my sources on there. Any sources that I make or that I use for my content will be placed up there. I will also be doing some housekeeping when it comes to my actual channel and stuff, and putting up sources on there and stuff too. I gotta go through the descriptions. All of this requires a lot of work, so it takes a lot of time to do all this. Oh, I was so far from the mic. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so all of this takes a lot of time and effort, and like I said, I work a full-time job, so kind of have to do it in my spare time while also being sure to give my fiance the attention that she deserves. So there is that. We are currently down to 1 viewer. So I don't know. Maybe I'll leave this as a an update video for now. I do have some news that I could go over, but I might just turn that into a recorded video and place that on a recorded video, because the whole point of this live stream is to get feedback, and I'd love to have discussions with people. I mean, I don't know if I've said this before, but the entire premise of the live stream, rather than just doing pre-recorded podcasts, which is what the other shows are for, is so that I can communicate with you guys. Because one of the things that I've always wanted with with shows like this that cover politics and stuff is there's times where people say things and I feel like they're missing information, or what they're saying is not entirely true or misguided or whatever, and then they say something and I'm like, that's not it, and I wish I could go over and just partake and say, hey, correct this, and then obviously I can't. So I want my viewers to be able to have that opportunity. If I say something that's wrong, I want them to jump in the chat and be like, hey, I think you're wrong about this. And then I can actually have a conversation with you. And we can find out the truth together. And I want everyone to have that opportunity. Now, obviously, if this does grow over time to the point where I can't respond to everyone, then it might have to be more of a catered response, or people will get priority. How that's going to happen, I'm not sure. And that's if it grows. I mean, even having like 10, 20 people, say in due course, that'd be pretty cool. Just people to engage with. That'd be fun. As of now, we have one viewer, who I believe is my brother, who I also believe is not actually listening as per the chat, because he's probably out at a restaurant listening to music or something, because they got a lot of live music in Mexico, which is where they are. So, what to do? Let's see if there's anyone who doesn't know that I'm live that normally tunes in. Well, let's see, shall we? For those who are watching in the future, I apologize for the long pause here. But my goal is to get engagement. My goal out of this video, I mean, I'm not view hunting. I don't really care about the total number of views. Someone to converse with would help make this video roll. Because I love opinions. I love hearing what people have to say, especially if they differ. As you probably noticed if you come back and watch these, most of the people so far share my point of view if I offer my perspective. I'd like some differing perspectives and differing views. Oh well. Well, let's do this. So it's just me today, so I'll try my best to make this like a normal report, but it's live, so I might be all over the place. I didn't come up with like an investigative report or anything today. I just have some news that I was going over, because the last few days I've been working really hard on finishing my website and getting everything organized and coming up with show content and stuff like that. So I didn't come up with too much for the live stream. But I do have some news. We'll start with our first topic of the day. The introduction to the Global Terrorism Index and Canada's security concerns. There was a press conference held today where security experts discussed the 2026 Global Terrorism Index. And what is that, do you ask? Well, the Global Terrorism Index is a report published annually by the Institute for Economics and Peace and was developed by IT entrepreneur and IEP's founder, Steve, now this is a long one, Kailila. KILLELEA. The index provides a comprehensive... let's zoom in here. There we go. Okay. The index provides a comprehensive summary of key global trends and patterns in terrorism since 2000. Wow. Long time coming. Long time running, sorry. It is an attempt to systematically rank the nations of the world according to terrorist activity. The index combines a number of factors associated with terrorist attacks to build an explicit picture of the impact of terrorism, illustrating trends and providing a data series. I say data. For some of you people that tout data, that just sounds wrong to me. It's data. Anyways, and providing a data series for an analysis by researchers and policymakers. It produces a composite score in order to provide an ordinal ranking of countries on the impact of terrorism. All right. Now back to the video. Where are we at? All right, yeah, we're right here. So, I already kind of went over all this. The 2026 Global Terrorism Report is the most in-depth report on how terrorism is changing across the world, which countries are being impacted by it, and what are the ideological motivating factors behind violent acts. Sorry, I gotta stop drinking bubblies. I'm like trying not to burp on mic. That's kind of nasty. But hey, I'm just me. Anyways, behind violent acts, with Canada experiencing increasing violent rhetoric. I love that one, violent rhetoric. We've talked about freedom of speech and stuff like that, but I would love to know what violent rhetoric is, and security incidents in the past year. Well, it seems like they go a little bit more in depth. This is Kyle Matthews that's going over this. I'll play a little snippet in a minute. But he's the executive director for Montreal Institute for Global Security. I will go into that another day, what that is and who they are and what they represent and stuff. Canada has seen a rise in targeting of anti-Semitic violence, and the issue of terrorism is not isolated to the country, obviously, but is connected to global crises, with events abroad having a direct impact at home and terrorist groups launching violent attacks against other countries, leading to wars and conflicts. I'm sure we all know all about that. Okay, let's take a little look-see here.
Global Terrorism Index.
Turn that down a little bit. That's pretty loud. Put that on, and here we go.
Good morning. My name is Kyle Matthews. I'm Executive Director of the Montreal Institute for Global Security. We're very pleased here today to be at the Parliament of Canada for the Canadian launch of the 2026 Global Terrorism Index. The Global Terrorism Index is the most in-depth report on how terrorism is changing across the world, which countries are being impacted by it, and what are the ideological motivating factors behind some of these violent acts. I would just like to say is that Canada in the past year or past 2 years, we've seen increasing violent rhetoric in Canada. We've had increased security incidents, people arrested or stopped for engaging in violent action that's considered terrorism. We've seen increased targeting, also anti-Semitic violence in Canada. So this is not an issue that is outside of Canada. We're connected to global crises, and what happens abroad has an impact directly at home.
All right. That's a little overview for you guys about what they kind of go over. They're talking about Canada specifically, and I think they expand later on in the video, talking about abroad. Now, on that note, I'm going to do a little research here because I distinctly remember there was a foiled terrorist attack in Canada where I believe it was the U.S. that uncovered it and then alerted the CSIS or the RCMP about it. Let's see if we can find anything on that. No, it's 2025. Terrorist attack foiled. There is a lot of coverage on it, but nothing official. It's all from the same video. Oh well. Maybe I'll touch on that another day. Anyways. So as he said, the past year has seen a rise in violent rhetoric. He goes on to say anti-Semitic violence, and he said the issue of terrorism is not isolated to the country, obviously, but is connected to global crises. I've already said all this. Well, the past year has seen terrorist groups attacking civilians in countries such as India. They're probably, they don't actually... Oh, hi, Cynthia. Welcome. You are my only viewer. It's good to have you here. Well, I did some housekeeping to start. Went over some of my new shows that I'm going to be launching, one of which has already started. Lucky you. Soon you'll be the #1 fan on the chat. I went over some of the shows that I'll be launching, one of which I aired my first episode yesterday. That was the short form format called InFocus. So I don't know if I really want to reiterate all that. So if you're interested, you can go back and check it out. But right now, I'm just talking about a press conference that was held today on... okay, cool. Security experts discussing the 2026 Global Terrorism Index. There's a press conference, and they're discussing the rise in global terrorism, and specifically terrorism in Canada, and its international links. So, everything that I have been saying has been just reporting on what they've said. So I'm not presenting any evidence or any facts behind it. I'm just reporting on what they've said. These guys are the leading experts on the matter in terms of research anyway. So I'm just sharing what they say. And I'm probably going to be doing that from live stream from now on. If I do any reports anymore, I might not even do reports anymore because I think I'm going to be leaving it to my recorded videos for that. And then just leaving the live streams to engagement and stuff like that. We'll see. I'm tinkering. Currently tinkering. Anyways, because no one's here, I'm going over the reports a little bit. But anyways, so the past year has seen terrorist groups attacking civilians in countries such as India, which I believe they're referring to the Palestinian movement. Could be wrong, but most likely. Leading to conflicts between India and Pakistan. That is definitely what they're talking about because of the tensions between India and Pakistan, as referenced. Highlighting the importance of preventing conflicts by examining how violent extremist groups can carry out attacks and shape narratives. Interesting. Anyways, so we move on to Michael Collins in the press conference. He's the president, I believe, of the Institute for Economics and Peace. And so he goes on to say that the Global Terrorism Index tracks terrorist deaths, incidents. He just goes over what they do. Kidnappings worldwide by different terrorist groups and analyzes trends over time, with the latest report showing a 20% reduction in terrorist deaths and incidents, but also a 280% increase in deaths in the West. That's wild. That is wild. Let's take a listen to that. Ah, shoot. Do what? I'll do this. Sorry, sister. No technical difficulties. I need a producer. Oh, I already have it up.
Thank you very much, Kyle, and good morning, everyone. The Global Terrorism Index basically looks into terrorist deaths, incidences, kidnappings and hostages worldwide by different terrorist groups, and looks at those over time. So we track differences from prior years, we track differences over the last decade, and we overlay that with geopolitical aspects and dynamics to be able to understand not only some of the drivers of terrorism around the world, but how those trends are changing over time. So overall, we saw a reduction in the number of terrorist deaths last year by about 20%, in the number of terrorist incidences as well. In fact, if we look at the countries improving, we see that they're over 4 times more countries have improved in some of the terrorism metrics than countries that deteriorated. So on the face of it, we see a reduction of terrorism worldwide. At the same time, there are a number of concerning trends. Most concretely, for the West, a 280% increase in the number of deaths in the West in particular.
Wow. So it's interesting because worldwide we're seeing less terrorism attacks, but in the West, speaking to Western nations, UK, Canada, Germany, France. It's so funny that you said that right as I'm labeling them. US, Western nation, Western democracies. The West usually refers to Europe, Canada, US, and that's pretty much it. That's the West. Built off of the Judeo-Christian values, those nations. Anyway, so there's been a 280% increase in deaths in the West, which is a wild increase. I will be providing sources, of course. The source here for today is just the video. Like I said, these guys are the experts on it, but I will be providing a video in the future where I go over these stats and the data that's presented by these gentlemen. And I'm sure most of it will be coming from their institute, which is the Institute for Economics and Peace. Yes, it is. Should we take a small break and go over the website? Would you like to do that? I'm actually pretty excited. Yeah? Okay, let's do that. We'll take a small break here.
Also see, for example...
Pause that. Let's go to the website. There you go. Yeah, you can't see my face when I'm zoomed in because I have it not centered. So that's okay. You can see half of me. The website is called www.critical... There it is. I think the name is official at this point because I've locked in the domain name. So we're sticking with Critical Chris. I also have an Instagram account and an X account and, as you know, a YouTube account. That's what I have for now. I am vehemently against TikTok, as you know, but I don't know. Maybe I'll have to get Kat or someone to operate my TikTok account because it's huge for engagement, isn't it? And I just don't even know how to use it, and I could care less. But anyway, so let's take a look at this. So this is just the home page, and it covers all the individual pages at the top. So we start here. We have our shows. Just a little tagline here, all your resources in one place. Looking for sources. This will take you to my sources page. These are featured videos, which I haven't updated because I have to put my newest video on there, which is my InFocus episode from yesterday. That one's about 7 minutes long. So it's nice and short, Cynthia, if you want to give it a listen. After this video's done, of course, because I assume you're going to be with me. Because you're the only one I have. And then there's the Contact Us page, which that'll take you there. And then Content Amendments. This is the fun one. This is the one where I go over any videos where someone has alerted to me that I've made a mistake or that I've been wrong about something. Once I've researched it and determined that they are correct and I am wrong, then I will make an amendment. And that could include like partial errors too. Let's say I'm 70% correct and 30% wrong. That still results in a correction. So the shows page. Currently I only have the Chris on Politics one on the website, but I will be adding the other ones. I said earlier, I'll briefly say it. So there's a short form one called InFocus. There's a medium form one between 10 and 20 minutes that's called the Roundup, which is just rounding up several different news stories. Still not going too deep into the stories. Actually, I think you'll be impressed with the efficiency of which I reported on the news story in my first InFocus video, Cynthia. You know how I like to drag on when I talk, but I did my best to get to the point, which is the point of those videos. And then there's the long form videos, which is going to be called Beyond the Headlines. Actually, the tagline for that one is pretty funny, but I'll save it for the actual video. But yeah, the long form Beyond the Headlines one will be the in-depth reports that could take any amount of time. And I'll be going very deep into the data, the statistics, the analytics, and all that kind of stuff on whatever it is that I'm talking about. And then there's another show that's going to be not as frequent, but it's going to be called Fact Check Fridays. I'm assuming it's going to be landing on Fridays because of the title. But that's going to be an episode where I go over any requested or anything I deem is necessary that requires a fact check over something that anyone that I have, let's say there's a video of a politician talking and saying something and declaring a a fact, I will be going over those and fact checking it, and we will see how correct they are in terms of their facts. What's so funny? Yeah, let's. This chat will be on at all times today because it's just you and I. Actually, it says I have 0 concurrent viewers at the moment, but we'll see. And then the final show, and I've talked to you about this, but the final show, which I may be starting at some point, has absolutely nothing to do with politics. Oh, and the Fact Check Friday comment. Oh, okay. I don't even know if I made a joke, but okay. The final show, which has nothing to do with politics, so anyone who's not interested doesn't have to watch, but I would encourage people to watch because I think it'll be very interesting. And it's going to be dubbed Beers and Bibles. And that was actually Kat that came up with that name because I have a very close friend of mine from work named Bertrand from Nigeria who, like me, is a Christian man, and we love to talk apologetics, and we both love to have our fair share of drinks. So I think the plan is we're going to sit down over drinks and just chat Bible stuff to the best of our abilities. That one's more for us and for other people who share that likeness. But like I said, there's going to be a lot of people who are into the politics segment of my, if I ever get any viewers. But yeah, they can bypass that. But I would encourage them not to, 'cause I'm trying to bring you all into the club. But anyways, so the website. Let's go to the shows section. So the Chris on Politics show. Here we go. This just covers all the episodes on that show. So like I said, there's Chris on Politics. There'll be a separate link for InFocus, and you'll find the episodes for that show in order. It's one thing I can't stand about YouTube channels is the videos are all over the place and they're all kind of confusing. And if they have different content covering different things, I can't stand having to try and find it. So this website's here as a supplement, and then on the YouTube channel, it'll be in a playlist. All my shows will be in a separate playlist. So the videos might not be in order or anything, but they'll be in a playlist. And it'll be very well organized and very well labeled. You know how I like to organize things, Cynthia. So yeah, each playlist will have the show title, and they'll be labeled and listed. Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3, and they'll be in consecutive order. So yeah, that's what I have so far. I got to work on that still. As I was saying to the nobodies that was listening earlier, I completely lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Can't remember. Completely gone. Out the window. Second page is the sources page. So, oh, yeah, I'm just working on the website. It's not completely done yet. Oh, as I was saying to them earlier, I am working a full-time job on top of this. So there's a lot of work involved when it comes to preparing for the videos, researching stuff for the videos, and then getting the video production together, and then actually recording the videos, and then editing the videos, and then doing the YouTube descriptions and all the YouTube SEO stuff, and then going to the website and putting it all up on there. It's basically a full-time job, and I'm trying to balance that with my actual full-time job. So maybe one day we can get enough viewers where I don't need another full-time job, because you know what? I'm actually really enjoying this. Who would have thought I am enjoying something where I get to talk about politics all day? Who would have thought? Anyways, so when you click on the link, so everything will be in consecutive order here. Well, no, I would say most YouTubers, it's not their full-time jobs, but most successful YouTubers, it is. That's the key adjective there is successful. Is that an adjective? I believe that's an adverb. Successful? No, it's an adjective. Yeah, most successful YouTubers, which I am not as of yet and may never be. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, so all you got to do is everything will be in order. Each page will look the same. They'll have the same little, I made that myself, by the way. All the pictures and stuff I made myself. All the drawings and pictures and stuff. But anyway, so it'll be in consecutive order. It'll have the name of the episode that it's coming from, and then you click on it. And then these are all the sources. So this is from my previous live stream. Yeah, previous live stream. From the Brookfield report that everyone was bored with. Oh, you didn't watch that one, Cynthia. Oh, this is the one that I made for you, actually. Or at least I think I did. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, this has all the info and all the data that I used to collect. So all you got to do is click on a link, and it'll take you to the site. Yeah, see? This takes you to the law that I was reporting on. Very cool, right? Yeah. Everything will have a source eventually. like I said, I'm a little bit behind. I'm producing content faster than I can create, that I can organize. But we'll get there. I have a long weekend coming up, so can work on it then. Next is the amendments page, and same thing. So these will be less frequent, obviously, because I won't be making an amendment for every video. Although I might have to make an amendment on my video because I may have said that I'm going to make an amendment on every video. Oh, no. Anyway, so yeah, so anytime there's an amendment that is requested or that I deem necessary myself, I will make it on this page. That is I made this. This is well, let's be real. I edited this with the help of AI. So in an actual Canadian, so my amendments, I think I've showed you this before, but my amendments are in the form of Canadian bills, as you can see. And at the top of every Canadian bill, let's go to Justice. Is that U.S. Justice there? Yeah, I need Canada Justice. Oh, here we go. If you get the top of every actual proposed legislation. No, we don't want proposed. We want... Sorry. Just give me a minute. We want actual legislation. I have a link for it somewhere, but... Canada System of Justice. Access to justice. It's in here somewhere. Not proposed. Not charter system. State. Not the criminal code. Is it the criminal? No, it's not that. Where the hell is it? Sure, let's do this, because this might work. Let's see. There you go. This isn't how the modern bills are laid out, but they're basically laid out in this way, but they have a coat of arms at the top. So I made my own coat of arms. It's got a moose, a lion. A lot of coat of arms for countries have a lion, so I had to make a lion as well. And then mine at the top has a beaver with a microphone. And then my C there. And I was going to put words in there, but it was too hard to get them to bend on Inkspace. But yeah, so I made that. So yeah, I'm very detailed. And yeah, so this was an amendment to my first YouTube video where I made a claim that turned out to be wrong. So holding myself accountable. And then I put the exact time that I made the claim as well. So anytime you hear me say something and you find out that what I said was wrong, please let me know and I will take the time to fix it. And then there's just the contact page. Look at that. That's me. So I say here, if you prefer, leave a comment or DM on any of our socials. I say our socials, but really it's just me at this point. And then, yeah, links to the very simple website, very easy to make. I just wanted something for people to go to for resources. So, and then maybe one day, if I get popular enough, I can make merch with my face on it or something. I don't know. What could I possibly make merch about? Carney's Cop-Outs. Something like that. I don't know. Something creative. Anyways, should we get back to the news? Do you want to hear the news or... Glasses? Yeah, sure. Okay, let's get back to the news. All right. Yep, gonna keep going. Anyway, so where were we? Anyway, so they're going over the terrorist index, and so this one's interesting. So this point, okay, I'll jump to that in a sec. The interesting point, but so despite the overall reduction in terrorism worldwide, there are concerning trends, including an increase in high-profile attacks, lone wolf attacks, and the participation of minors in terrorist incidents, with 40% of terrorist investigations in the West incorporating minors last year. Now, I'm going to make a note right now that I'm just speaking on my opinion, but when I'm on socials, one thing that I'm noticing is there's a lot of young kids who are being radicalized, whether it's through Islam or through other activist networks. A lot of radicalization happening where the emotions of children on social media are being exploited. Anyways, that was my opinion, but I've been noticing that quite a bit. And I too have seen any of the terrorist attacks that have videos, like the attempted attack in New York. Parents are not censoring children's content, correct? Which is funny because the last live stream we had, I don't know if you saw it. I thought you would have been interested. Did you see the poll, the parent poll that I talked about in the last live stream? Here, chat on. Chat's just going to be on the whole day because it's just me and you. Let me know if you've seen the parent poll. CO. No. Oh. So the parent poll basically covered it was Angus Reid poll, and it covered actually I'll just pull it up from my website. Because I have my sources available. Go to sources here. Sorry, I'm getting distracted, but this is related, I think. Poll. Here we go. Angus Reid poll. Angus Reid's pretty reputable. It is just a poll, though, so there's no actual science behind it. They just polled a few thousand people, 4,000, I think. But banning children under 16 from social media platforms widely supported by parents and most Canadians. This made a lot of headlines on social media the other day, 2 days ago, because in Australia, they actually passed law. I believe it's passed. I'm going to say I believe it's passed because I'm not entirely sure if it's actually, because I believe they have the same system as us where they have to receive royal assent, but I don't know if it's actually passed as law, but it's pretty close to if it hasn't. But yeah, parents want it banned. But, oh, we discussed this on the phone? Okay. Well, what I find interesting, though, and what I agree with here is I don't like the term banned because that makes it seem like the government's the one doing the banning, whereas right here, they've noted that, which is so funny that they titled it like this. They made it seem like they support the government banning, but then right here it says, yeah, but look at this. Although a ban, which will reportedly be discussed by the Liberal Party at its convention in April, so we'll follow up with that later on in April because they don't come back until mid-April into the House after their 2-week vacation, would be welcomed by most parents. More say that the responsibility for regulating social media use should fall to the parents rather than the government. So 72 to 20, and I'm assuming the other 8% is undecided. Yeah, it's a catch-22 because banning children leads to more censorship, which prevents kids from being informed in regards to things that they should be informed of. But then you are protecting them from seeing things that could radicalize them. Or perhaps maybe a better alternative, or just another alternative in general, would be to hold parents liable for the actions of their kids. Some sort of law that holds them liable. So any action of a child who's a minor that is a violent action, the parents would be charged as adults for. Yes, they are. Yeah, I agree. But how do you enforce that? Like, what is the only way to enforce that is for the government to have access to all of our devices. Like, do you think that the parents being charged for the actions of a child would be too difficult to enforce? I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I would love to contact a lawyer because I think legally, again, this is just my opinion, I could be way off here, but legally, parents are considered responsible for their child's well-being. They're considered responsible for the caretaking of their child in so many ways legally already, that why could they not just make an amendment to a bill or create a new bill that emphasizes that any negative action on society that occurs with a child is the responsibility and the repercussions of which falls on the parent. Although then the parent ends up in jail, and then the kid has no parents and then continues to commit more crimes. Maybe it's not a good idea. Due to not enough resources to protect the child. Yeah, true. True. I still just, the idea of the government having the ability to censor our phones in that way, it's going a little too far in my opinion. I think there's got to be a better way. Perhaps the government holds the social media networks to account, where the social media is forced to do a better job of screening the content that children see. One thing I don't want to happen, though, is kids preventing from seeing, because this just seems like a censorship law. Well, it is a censorship law, but it prevents certain screens from getting certain content. Whatever game does that. Make everything like COD. Can't log into certain things without proof of age. Yeah. That's fair. I'd have to think about it. It's a sticky one. I don't have kids. You do, so. But at the same time, just the idea of censorship. Anyways, let's go back to the terrorism stuff. Should we just get you on the line? Cynthia, do you want to join from a vocal state? You could be my first caller. You could be my first guest. No one knows who you are. You can even put on one of those fake voice thingies. I could put a filter on. I do. Check it out. Ready? Let's see. Just give me a mo. Enter pin. What? One second. It's requesting that I enter a pin. Okay, I got the code. Here we go. How are you watching right now? On your phone? That's a good question. Don't you have an iPad? You can watch on one and talk on the other. Oh well, let's make it happen. Ready? Here we go. All right. It's coming through. Hello. Welcome to the channel. This is so exciting. Hello, can you hear me? Oh, wait, let me get my microphone connected. I know, just hold on. No, we gotta make this. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Hello. This is my guest speaker for the day. This is very exciting. My first guest speaker. Who would have thought it would be? We're just going to call her C. C for... Oh, actually, your chat name is on the chat, so everyone knows who you are. Yeah. Okay, well, welcome to the channel. Cynthia is, as of now, one of my biggest fans in terms of viewership and chats, but she's also one of my biggest critics in that she holds me to account better than most. She keeps me honest. Okay, so shall we move on to the terror stuff? Okay, well, anyway, so we are now, let me just go back to one. Actually, I feel like we can almost move on because okay, well, I'll just quickly go over it. Oh, okay, so there's an increased involvement of minors in terrorist incidents is an ongoing concern, with 20% of terrorist attacks in France now incorporating minors. That's crazy. And 80 minors were arrested for terrorism offenses in the UK last year, compared to a dozen 5 years ago. So that's quite a. Oh, they already touched on that above. So terrorist attacks include. Let me just find it. Or maybe they haven't touched on it yet. Maybe that's something that involving the minors. No, I swear they did touch on it. Impact to home. I swear they okay, so it tracks terrorist deaths. So anything that is so. Ladies and gentlemen, behind Cynthia on the call is her wonderful husband, Jordan Reed. He probably did. My favorite show is on. Welcome, Cat. That's my fiance talking. Anyway, so yeah, so what do they mean by terrorist attack? So I'm assuming so here it says tracks terrorist deaths, so any deaths caused by a terrorist. And do you want me to define terrorist? Okay, so terrorist, I believe, is any violent attack or rhetoric that involves intent to cause mass harm, would be my guess. But let's see. No, a terrorist is an individual who uses violence or threats of violence against civilians or non-combatants to induce fear. I think that's the important part. To induce fear and achieve political, religious, or ideological aims. So it has to be politically, religiously, or ideologically motivated. Okay, so back to the report. So it's terrorist-related deaths, incidents, kidnappings, and hostages worldwide. So that's what they're covering. So anything under this report is recovering that stuff. Now, moving on. So moving on from the minors, the West accounts for a small portion of global terrorism, with countries like Pakistan experiencing a significantly higher number of deaths. I'm not surprised with that. Having 20 times more deaths than North America, Europe, Australia, and other Western countries combined, with over 1,000 deaths each year for the last couple of years. I can't wait to go on my report about cousin marriages in Pakistan. It just says 20 times more deaths. I'm going to be doing another deeper report one day that'll on this topic that'll cover the data. Why Pakistan? Well, it's an Islamic state for one, and as you'll see below, Islam is the number. No, I'm gonna share it, but Islam is the number one religion that's responsible for terrorism around the world. So it's an Islamic state, but it's also, this is my opinion now, but I think it's one of the highest countries on the planet that has cousin marriages. So the IQs are very low. I'm pretty sure it has one of the lowest IQs in the country. Could be wrong about that. So not fact checkable. It's just an opinion, or it's a claim. Damn it, it's a claim. But it's a questionable claim. I'm questioning my own claim. The word is preface. Anyways, so going on. So they're actually going to talk about this. Pakistan has been the country most impacted by terrorism, driven by groups such as the Taliban and the Islamic State, which has also been active in Nigeria. Now, that's a big one. I am definitely going to make a report on that one day, because that one, I have a lot of friends here in Winnipeg who are from Nigeria, and I've talked to you, Cynthia, about what's happening in Nigeria. Which has also been active in Nigeria, the country that has deteriorated the most in terms of deaths and incidents, which, as you are aware, there's been, I believe it's hundreds of thousands of people have been killed due to Islam in Nigeria. They're slaughtering Christians. So the Sahel region, which includes countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, is it Niger? Continues to be a major hub for terrorism, primarily driven by the Al-Qaeda affiliate group JNIM, which has solidified its terrain and started to carve out a geographical caliphate. and I believe a caliphate. Actually, we're going to look up the term instead of me trying to. Yeah. Oh, I was right. It's an Islamic state under the leadership of a caliph, which is someone who I've been listening to a lot about this lately, so I actually know what it is. It's someone who, look at me reaching down. You can't see anything, but I'm reaching down. It's someone who has descended from Muhammad, not biologically, but is like a successor to Muhammad. And Muhammad is the prophet who was given the revelation of the Quran. So it's under which the entire religion of Islam was built. Oh, I can't wait to get into that on Bibles and beers. But anyways, this is so much more fun when I have a caller on. We should get you on. Oh, with that on, it's going to be nonsense, but I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. Oh, well, that's fine. You'll be able to get the information and stuff like that, but yeah, it's a short delay, though. I think it's only like 10 seconds. But anyways, so despite a reduction in deaths and incidents in Mali, Burkina Faso, I don't even know where that is in Niger, there is an expectation of an increase in the future with terrorist groups operating in borderlands where 64% of all terrorist incidents occur within 100 kilometers of a border. Interesting. Did not know that. So I'm not going to put on the video now because there's no point because you can't hear it. So people are just going to have to listen to me, and I'll post the video in my sources page on my website later. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have to find a way to fix that when I get callers on. Or the callers are just not going to be able to listen to the video while I post the video. But you're the only... That too. Anyway, so the ability to smuggle arms and resources, melt away across borders, and operate in areas with artificial borders and natural barriers like forests, mountains, makes borderlands prime areas for terrorist groups to operate, as seen in countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Colombia. Oh. Colombia has seen the largest number of deaths from terrorism since the inception of the Global Peace Index and is now one of the 10 most impacted countries by terrorism. Would not have guessed that. Although I guess it has to do with the drugs. With the situation being influenced by factors such as the legacy of colonialism and the and the presence of groups like FARC and ELN. I'm going to have to do some research on this. Now, what I'm reading here is I'm reading a summary that I've made up of the people speaking. So this is their perspective. So they're saying colonialism is the reason there's terrorism there, which could be true. But anytime I hear that word, I just start to roll my eyes. All right, so they go on to talk about the Iran war and the impact on terrorism, global terrorism landscape and persistence. There were over 5,500 deaths from terrorism and nearly 3,000 incidents of terrorism last year, indicating that terrorism remains a significant threat globally, naturally. And then Phil Gursky goes on, and he continues to talk about counterterrorism analyst. He is a counterterrorism analyst. He commended the Global Terrorism Index report, considering it's the best single source of open source data for terrorism internationally. We're going to fact check that one day. But I'm assuming it is. This, from what I've read about it, it seems like the go-to for terrorism, aside from the intelligence agencies. But we never get too much data from them anyways. Now on to Canada, because, this is a podcast about Canada. Canada has experienced attacks such as the one on the U.S. consulate in Toronto and Jewish synagogues and schools, which I was actually talking to Dad about. Highlighting the need for vigilance and awareness that events outside of Canada can have impact within the country. The GTI report is available on the website of the Institute of Economics and Peace, which I will provide the link to that later. And it provides valuable information for those seeking to understand the global terrorism landscape. It's basically going to say Islam right across the top. That I have no problem with declaring. I will be very... Yeah. There's been many terrorist attacks. I was talking to Dad about this. He didn't know about this, but there's been school shootings and stuff like that people aren't aware of. Now, there haven't been kids shot, but these are acts of aggression where people are shooting up the physical buildings. And so they're shooting up Jewish synagogues, and they're also shooting up Jewish schools. They haven't shot any children, but they're shooting the actual physical building. And then there's also been the hundreds. I'm shocked they didn't mention that, but I'm actually not shocked they didn't mention that. But there's actually been hundreds of churches that have been burned down over the last several years in Canada. See, I think more of them have been occurring in Quebec because there's a larger, I believe, don't quote me on this, actually, I'm just going to look it up. I believe Quebec has the largest Christian population per capita. I'm going to say per capita because Ontario probably does overall because there's just so many people in Ontario. And Canada has the largest per capita. Actually, even per capita, it might be wrong. So it's Newfoundland and Labrador, 82%. Quebec is often thought of as the most traditional Christian province. The 2021 census found that the population is less religious today than in the past. Oh, okay. There you go. So it's shifted. Used to be Quebec. But they do have a lot of historic churches in Quebec, and like that's just based on the architecture and stuff. But yeah, so there's been a lot of church burnings all across the country. And I think the suspects of these church burnings, because no one's really doing anything about it. No one's talking about it. No one's doing anything about it. But there's two prevailing thoughts on that. Again, this is just my opinion, but not my opinion, but the opinions of people. One is that they're Islamic in nature, which could be true. And then the other is the indigenous population is burning churches in response to what they deem is a lack of, what's the word? Or maybe just out of retaliation for a lack of reconciliation or something. I don't know. But those are the two prevailing ideas amongst the populace, neither of which are confirmed or necessarily true. Okay, so youth radicalization in the use, we already touched on that. The role of social media and technology in terrorism. Okay, so that's goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Full circle. Are you looking up stuff? Oh, well, what are you finding? See, this is why I have you. Well, there's nothing wrong with Google either, though, for stuff like population statistics and stuff. Or are you looking up like specific like the churches and stuff like that? Well, I do know that the Quebec government is making a huge push, like the provincial government and probably the Bloc Québécois is making a huge push to prevent both immigration from Islam and also basically they're trying to prevent religion. That's a bit of an exaggeration. They're restricting religion in the same way that a lot of countries are starting to do in Western Europe. Like Denmark and Sweden and other countries. I think Switzerland, they've all started putting huge restrictions on Islam. I think Italy did something recently. But there's a lot of laws being passed around the Western nations because Islam, I have no problem with saying it. Islam is not a good religion. It is not. I'm not saying that every Islamic person or every Muslim is a bad person. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the religion itself on its face is bad. And no, I'm saying I'm saying the religion itself is bad. I'm saying that definitively, and I'm saying that confidently. I've been reading the Quran more and more and more and more, and I've been reading about Islamic history and how the Quran is interpreted, and Islam is bad. And that is easy to identify, and I know there's a whole push on Islamophobia. I'm not afraid of Muslims, and in fact, I know several Muslims who are good people. That doesn't mean that the religion that they believe in is good. And also, not all Muslims adhere to Islam in the same way that they're meant to. If they adhered to it in the way that they were meant to, then every Muslim would be a terrorist, just by nature. If they followed the hadiths that they were supposed to follow, if they're Sunni Muslims, and they followed the Quran as they're supposed to, then they would all be terrorists. It's a very, I like to say evil, because I believe in evil. It's a very evil religion, and I'm going to get into that on one of my reports. because that's something I'm very passionate about. Yep. Yep. Nope. It would be considered radical from a modern lens in certain, because anything conservative is considered radical nowadays. That's one thing about Islam that I actually do agree with, is that they do have some conservative principles in the Quran that I would agree with, but that doesn't mean so there's a huge difference between the Bible and the Quran, and we can get into this because I find this topic very interesting. I spend most of my days either reading the audiobook version of the Quran or listening to people talk about the Quran. And I actually have 3 books on my bedside stand right now that are about the Quran and the comparisons between the Bible and the Quran. And so one of the most important distinctions between the Bible and the Quran is the fact that the Bible is not a book of laws or adjudication or directions. It is from Jesus, and there is the 10 Commandments. So there is that. But the Bible is more so it's a series of books all written throughout the history of Israel, or the ancient Near East, by the Jews, and it's more about retelling a story that leads to the ultimate conclusion, which is Jesus and his mission. Whereas the Quran is not a series of books. It's a single book written by a single man who has a very checkered history. If you look up the history of Muhammad, it is disgusting. And that book, it's a single book, which he didn't write, by the way, because he was illiterate. So someone else wrote it for him. The book is a set of instructions, essentially. And those instructions, not every instruction is bad. There are some good instructions in the Quran. I will give it that. But it also contradicts itself a lot. And there is some very nasty instructions in that book. One of which I know most women would hate, which most women, I don't know what it is up with women in defending Islam, but most women would hate the fact that in Islam, you are allowed to marry minors. You're allowed to have 4 wives, which Muhammad was given the blessing of being allowed to have 9 wives, but everyone else is allowed to have 4 wives, and those wives are allowed to include minors. And when I say minors, I say anyone up like until infants, and they are allowed to procreate with them. And that is still going on today, and that is still active amongst Islamic nations today. And within Islam, they are called, through the hadiths and through the Quran, they are called to basically take over every nation. And that is done through Sharia law, which you'll find in the hadiths, which a hadith is the telling through Muhammad's most reliable source. So these sources amongst Sunni Muslims are very reliable sources. They're considered, next to the Quran, the most authoritative sources. They're considered just as legitimate as the Quran. In fact, there's one that has Elisha, I believe her name is. Is her name Elisha? The wife of Muhammad, who was 9 years old. She retells her story about how he married her when she was 9. Or no, did he marry her when she was 6 and he slept with her when she was 9? I can't remember. Anyways, and they're called to Sharia law. You've probably heard the term Sharia law. And that's not a radical Islamic phrase. That is an Islamic phrase. And the interesting thing about Islam is that not every Islam or Muslim will call for Sharia law, but there's not a single Muslim who will denounce it. And you're seeing this in places like the UK, Germany, France, where you have entire no-go zones unless you either pay what's called a jizya tax, which is a tax on anyone who's not a Muslim, or you have to become a Muslim. Also, something I was actually just talking to my friend Bertrand today about is the punishment for apostasy is death, which apostasy is anyone who leaves Islam. And you have 3 days. You have 3 days to reconvert back to Islam. So if I'm a Muslim and I declare I am now a Christian, the punishment for that is death. And if I do not declare that I am now a Muslim again in 3 days' time, then I will be killed. All over the world. There's almost 100, I think there's around 100, I'm not going to name the exact number. There's around 100 Muslim nations where they have a majority population is Muslim, where Islam is the controlling, governing body of the country. And not a single one of those countries is freedom of religion allowed. You have to be a Muslim. And if you're not a Muslim, you have to pay a jizya tax. And in those countries, every single one has human rights violations happening all the time, where you have women being stoned to death. Women have to wear hijabs. They have to wear burqas. They're not allowed to show their face. They are subservient to men. That's another thing about the Quran. And the thing about the Quran is a lot of people like to, I could go on with this for hours, but and this isn't even one of the topics that I'm talking about. So interesting. But the thing about the Quran is it was created by a man who stood to gain a lot from creating the religion that he created. I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to say the wrong thing, because I'm not as certain about Muhammad's history. I just know that he partook in a lot of wars. He inherited a lot of wealth through those wars, and those wars were the result of him claiming that he was a prophet of Allah. Allah is literally just God in Arabic, but he claimed that he was the same, that Allah, the Allah that he had a revelation from, is the same God that the Jews and the Christians worshipped, Yahweh, the God of the Bible. The thing is, though, is that historically, I'm not making this claim from Islam because he doesn't make this claim from Islam, but historically, he was illiterate. He didn't know how to read, so he didn't read anything from the Bible. So everything that he recounted, that he talks about in the Quran, because the Quran takes a lot of stuff from the Bible, but it takes it incorrectly. And the Muslims have a hard time with this today because they claim that our books, the Bible, the Torah, the Injil as they call it, Injil is just the Gospels, have been corrupted. But what he did is he took those books and he repurposed them and he changed them, because what he had as far as his knowledge of the Bible was just verbally transferred to him. It was relayed to him verbally because he couldn't read. And so he got a lot of stuff wrong. There's a lot of contradictions. And so he does make a lot of references to the Bible, and he does say that the Bible is a legitimate book and stuff, but then he goes on to contradict it, and then he goes on to say a lot of things that go completely against what Jesus taught. And so if we're going to compare that and contrast that with the Bible, like I said, the Bible is a story about man's relationship with God, which Allah, Muhammad's Allah, does not have a relationship with people. He's not a loving God. He's not a relational God. He's not a God that stands to gain anything from people on earth. He doesn't gain or lose anything depending on whether or not we are saved. He doesn't care. There's no relationship. He is removed from us. He is all powerful. He is all knowing, and he is wise, and he is the final judge. He's kind of like a dictator. Oh, you're listening. Welcome, Critical Chris, too. Yeah, he's essentially a dictator who is far removed from us, whereas the biblical God is a relational God, and the story throughout the Bible is just a history of God's relationship with man, culminating with Jesus. And Christians base all of their works not on what we see in the Bible, but what we're instructed from the Bible. And what we're instructed from the Bible is from Jesus. And I personally don't think there's anything that is controversial whatsoever about Jesus. And the reason most Western individuals feel this way is because our societies were built on Judeo-Christian beliefs. So we tend to all agree with that. Our morals are built off of the fundamental principle around the Bible. Even if you don't believe in the Bible and you don't believe in God and you don't believe in the Christian God, we tend to agree with a lot of the moral foundations of it because that's what our society was built on. So if anyone could find me something that they don't agree with when it comes to Jesus' teachings, then I would be shocked. because Jesus primarily taught love. He was beers and Bibles. That's why I said I don't know if I want to go down this rabbit hole, but I told you I could talk about this for hours because I was saying before you arrived at the beginning of the chat or at the beginning of the stream that this is the topic that I'm most passionate about. I'm far more interested in this than politics, and just so happens that we're talking about terrorism and Islam. And I have no qualms with saying that Islam is an evil, vile religion that cannot be contrasted with the Bible. Because the big thing with the Bible is people always say, but bad things happen in the Bible and God instructs bad things, but those things are taken in context. It's not an instruction from God. God calls for entire cities to be destroyed, but those cities are in context of that period of history and the story that's being told. It's not saying that throughout, like, God's giving us permission as Jews at the time to go out and wipe out anyone that we want all throughout history. It's a story that's being told about a time from long ago that pertains to something very specific. And if you actually read the Bible and read these stories, then you know that it's not meant to be taken as an instruction or a guide for how we live our lives. Yeah. Well, like, yeah. Well, but also, like, if you look back at Sodom and Gomorrah, people always talk about he destroyed entire cities. That includes women and children and stuff. And the entire premise of that is the fact that these cities were deemed as having no redeeming qualities anymore. And it's tough morally and philosophically to try and justify God taking out an entire city that could have women and children. But that's not a condoning of continuously throughout history saying anytime there's evil, you can go wipe out cities. No, it's just a story about something that happened, and there's a lot more philosophically involved in that story than you would find in the Quran, whereas the Quran is very specific in nature with a lot of its instruction. There's a lot of things that are unspecific and hard to understand, but a lot of it is very specific in its instruction. So anyways, we don't have to keep going with that. I'll save that for beers and Bibles. Anyways, so yeah. Let's move on from the terrorist stuff because I feel like I've kind of... Yeah, let's move on to the next one. Okay. So, I'm not going to get too much because I've rambled so long on this one that I don't even know if I want to touch on these ones. So, there was, you know what? I'm just going to skip these. Honestly, I think we're good for today. There was a press conference today about spending, government spending for a base in where is it? Oh, Gagetown. I think that's how it's pronounced. So there was an announcement for spending for a base in Gagetown. I'll just read it. Shit. So Dominic LeBlanc expressed his gratitude to the 6,500 Canadian Armed Force members. That's a crazy small amount. 1,000 civilians, veterans, and military family. Oh, no, that's who was all present. Okay. Family present at the event for the service to Canada and acknowledged the privilege of being at the base with his colleagues. All right. As we don't need to read all that. The Canadian government is investing $172 million in a new ground-based air defense capability, which will enable the Canadian Armed Forces to defeat threats posed by various munition systems, including rockets, artillery, and uncrewed aircraft systems. Mind you, this is what Dominic is saying. I am just recounting what he's saying, and I'm summarizing it. So I will be fact-checking this because in my last video, I talked about government spending on D&D and how they've reached their 2% requirement for NATO on spending, and a lot of that is fluff. So I will be going over this to see how accurate all of this is and how much of this actually bears fruit and how much of this is just them throwing out numbers to invest in random stuff that actually, like, if this actually, whether or not this actually helps us create or improve military readiness and effectiveness. If not, this is just fluff. Anyways, so the government is also investing in the people who serve the country by upgrading the transition. Again, this is from LeBlanc. The government is also investing in the people who serve the country by upgrading the transition center in Gagetown, which will support Canadian Armed Forces members and their family. So basically, they're investing in this base. How much was it? 172 million. And bunch more political rhetoric. The government has announced investments to increase defense expenditure, aiming to reach 3.5 by 2035, and an additional 1.5 in critical infrastructure such as highways and bridges, with a significant portion of this investment going towards the recapitulation of the primary Army training area at CFB Gagetown. The investment of $1 billion at CFB Gagetown will introduce new ground-based air defense systems, ensure that soldiers train on infrastructure built to last, and support Canadian industry in creating construction and manufacturing jobs. This is from MP Wayne Long. All right. And that's pretty much the gist of the announcement. There's more to it, but I'm going to do a separate video on the report on this. I've decided that I'm not going to do as many reports on these chats. What I'm going to do is allow people to watch my videos as they please, and then the chat will be an opportunity for us to just go over what we've watched in the past and any questions they have and anything that they want to talk about. So if there's anything you want to talk about, Cynthia, you just let me know. Oh, no, that's next. Don't you worry. Did I put that first? I put healthcare first. It's oh, sorry. Is it 10 o'clock? Oh, for you. Oh, okay. Well, we'll move on to healthcare then. So this is specifically in regards to BC, though. There was a press conference today regarding BC. So this doesn't have to do with Ontario because, as you know, healthcare is a provincial matter. So Stephanie Higginson, Parliamentary Secretary for Primary Care Access, opens the statement by making a land acknowledgement, which we're not going to talk about. We're going to skip that. After which David Eby, his name is pronounced Eby, spelled E-B-Y, the Premier of British Columbia, he announces that Canada's healthcare system is facing pressure due to an aging population, longer hospital stays, and an international shortage of highly trained healthcare professionals, which is causing strain on remaining healthcare workers. Wow, I didn't know that. To address these challenges, the government is taking action, including opening a new medical school, adding more residency places at BC, and connecting people to primary care providers, with over 600,000 people connected to a family doctor or nurse practitioner since 2023. I will be doing a deep dive on that as well. Because living in BC myself, I find a lot of that hard to believe. I feel like the government, when they make these press conferences, like when they announce this stuff, I feel like they know how to fluff the numbers. The government's efforts have resulted in 77% of people in British Columbia having a primary care provider. I call bullshit on that. Saying it right now, I call bullshit on that. Which can provide peace of mind. I bet you they took some sort of number and they fluffed it up to make it sound like that, and so they can say it where it's partially true. Which can provide peace of mind, take pressure off emergency rooms, and help manage chronic health conditions. We could easily just go look up what the wait times are right now at Vancouver General. A new medical school at SFU's Surrey campus will open this fall, and over 500 health professionals from the United States have accepted jobs in British Columbia. Wow. Yeah, like why? Who would do that? Who would take a pay cut, increase in taxes, increase and live in one of the most expensive cities on the planet, in one of the most overburdened healthcare districts probably in Canada? There's got to be an incentive. That doesn't make any sense. Are you fact-checking this? Well, it's just 500 health professionals. Like, do they mean janitors? Like, oh no, it says professionals from the United States have accepted jobs in British Columbia, including doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. I want to know how they did that. That doesn't make any sense. We're gonna do a deep dive on this because these claims, like, this is the stuff I want to do fact check Fridays for. is when politicians say this kind of stuff, because I swear they're fluffing the numbers. That doesn't make any sense. The government progress in connecting people to the primary care providers includes over 233,000 British Columbias being connected in 2025 alone, and more than 4,000 people getting connected every week. 233,000. That's not that many, given the number of people who live in BC. I guess that's through 1 year, so it's not terrible, but that's still, I find it very hard to believe that 77% of the population in BC has health care, a family doctor. I find that very hard to believe. When I left, which they're saying that this program started before I left, when I left, most of the people that I knew were actually losing their doctors because they were either retiring or they were leaving. And everyone I know, I mean, this is anecdotal, obviously, but everyone I know who was in healthcare, and I knew a lot of nurses and one doctor, and they were all quitting. And a lot of them were fresh because they're all in their late 20s, early 30s, and they were all quitting their jobs because they just couldn't handle the stress and the lack of providers, which we've talked about this. Desperate measures. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Hey, you know what? At least they're trying. But 500. You know what? You know what though? I actually don't find that too hard to believe. If they're polling people from Washington, Oregon, and California, those states are farther left than we are, and they have extremely high tax burdens, extremely high cost of living, and a lot of those people, they absolutely abhor, like they hate Trump, and they think he's I don't know. I don't know enough. I would have to do some research, but what I do know, it censored my comment. You probably said something bad. There's I think I forgot to turn off comment moderator. It's like an automatic moderator. So if you say anything that could be deemed as offensive, I think it automatically blocks you. Critical Chris 2.0 or Julien or Zach or whoever you are. But honestly, now that I think about it, I wouldn't be too surprised because there's so many people in the U.S., in those states, from those walks of life that have talked about going to Canada as refugees because they want to get out from the dictator, the King Trump. So there's probably people in that industry that would be more than happy to jump the border if they're being incentivized to do so. Beneficial for, well, yeah, I mean, if they're happy to come to Canada. Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to bet that people who are on the right in the U.S. would be happy to see them leave and say, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And the grass is always greener on the other side. And I bet you those 500 healthcare providers are kicking themselves in the ass right now because they realize how much. I mean, it could be that BC has a better system than some of those states, but I'd be willing to bet that's not the case as far as their quality of life is for the providers. Maybe not necessarily for the people receiving care, but for the providers, I'd be willing to bet it's much better in Washington, Oregon, and California. Although those states are honestly, those states are in bad shape. So honestly, it could be comparable. I mean, they are very close to Vancouver in terms of their politic. So, MLA Minister of Health Josie Osborne says, the changes made to the primary care system in British Columbia over the past few years have led to significant improvements, including increased recruitment of healthcare professionals and better access to care for residents. Still don't believe this, but in 2023, a new payment model for family doctors was introduced. Interesting. And the Health Connect registry was expanded across the province to match patients with providers. Now, I do remember this. I partook in this program. So I was waiting 5.5 years or 6 years for a doctor, and I could not get a doctor. And then I signed up for this program before I left, and it took them another 2 years to connect me to a doctor. So they are connecting people to a doctor. So this is a service that provides like a direct method to find a doctor, but it took them 2 years to connect me to a doctor. So no, this is BC. This was when I was like an app kind of thing where he wait years and years, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So me, it was 2 years after I signed up. And the funny thing is I had actually found my own doctor by the time they got a hold of me, because there was a guy who was opening up a new practice, and he was a young guy out of school, and he was taking on patients just down the street from me. So that was when I was going through my whole it was the guy. Remember, I had my testicle thing. He took me on as his patient, as his client, I guess you would say, when he discovered that I had that thing. But anyway, so resulting in over 600 people being connected to a primary care provider since then. I mean, I guess that could be believable, but how many people lost care providers? Because I know a lot of people personally, like I said, this is anecdotal, who lost providers in that same time period. So just because it connected people with providers doesn't mean people aren't still losing providers. One example of which was friends of mine, their entire family lost their provider because he ended up moving to Alberta because he was just tired of living in BC. Says approximately 4.4 million people now have a primary care provider. We'll have to look that up. Instead of doctors, yeah, because they're allowed to be primary care providers. Yeah, we're experiencing that here in Manitoba, actually. Most of the people... Yeah, but there's like several NPs to one doctor, though, right? So, and it's easier to become a nurse practitioner. Like, most of the patients or the clients that we have at my work are, they deal with nurse practitioners. Very few actually work with a doctor. Yeah, they're still capable of doing most things that doctors can do. They're allowed to prescribe medicine. They're just not allowed to, what is it that they're not allowed to do? Is like they're not allowed to actually, like they can't be surgeons. They can't do anything of that nature, but they're able to do anything from a basic family doctor perspective, where they can refer you to doctors, they can refer you to specialists and stuff like that, and they're allowed to prescribe you medication. I was talking to my boss about this, who's a pharmacist. I think chronic. They're not allowed to do chronic stuff, right? Or they're allowed to do chronic. Something to do with chronic. Yeah. 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 Yeah, we had a situation at work where I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to get in trouble or cause any issues, but me and my boss ended up discussing, hello, Harley. Me and my boss ended up discussing like nurse practitioner roles, because we were going over who had a nurse practitioner and who didn't and stuff, and who had a doctor and who didn't. And I was asking those questions, and he used the term chronic. This is the pharmacist that was talking, and he said, from what I remember, it had something to do with chronic treatment and stuff. And then obviously they can't be surgeons and they can't be specialized in that way. They said, so they also say that the workforce growth and training, I think this is still Josie Osborne talking here. So she says more than 500 U.S. trained professionals. We've already gone over this. So it includes 109 doctors, 315 nurses, 51 nurse practitioners, and 29 allied health professionals, whatever the hell that means. I guess that could be care aides and stuff like that, who are already working in communities across the province. So they do go over the increase. Okay, so the province has made efforts to grow its health workforce, resulting in BC having more doctors per capita than any other province in Canada. What? A 23% increase in the number of family doctors, 137% increase in nurse practitioners, and 17% increase in nurses between 2017 and 2024. It does seem like the nurse practitioners are taking off a lot of the load from the doctors themselves, allowing the doctors to focus on what they need to focus on. It's expanding training seats and has established a new medical school. Oh, that's interesting, which will open this fall with its first intake of 48 students, with the goal of providing timely and reliable care to people in their communities. I'm going to be looking into all this. This could all be true. I mean, you can't fault. If they are actually trying to make it better. The problem is, like, I have a lot of distrust in the NDP in BC. So, given a lot of the stuff that was happening when I left. But that doesn't mean they're not capable of doing good things. So this could very well all be true, and not even, fluffing the numbers, as I like to say. Healthcare professionals experience. They had several doctors come on and speak on behalf of their experience. There's about 5 to 10 doctors that they brought onto the video, and they called in to the press conference, and they spoke on things. There's one that spoke on the NICU. One was talking about a hospital in Kelowna. But he went on to talk about Indigenous stuff, so I take him with a grain of salt automatically. That's another thing I have no fear of talking about. The Indigenous stuff. But anyways, Marita's story, same thing. These are just stories from doctors and their experiences with this new program. And then... so the recruitment of U.S. healthcare practitioners to work in primary care clinics, foundry centers, and hospitals is ongoing, and over 600,000 people have been connected. We've already gone over this. They're just repeating themselves. And then there's question and answer period, where they go over a whole bunch of topics, including the FIFA World Cup that BC's hosting, government responses to DRIPA concerns. Now, that's a big one. That's one that I would like to know more about, and that I'm going to do some more research on for sure. Have you heard about this? Basically, land rights being given to the First Nations. Now, I'm going to make this abundantly clear. I don't know all the details of this. I'm going to do some research on it, but I've seen a lot on the fact that there's been... I think there was a provincial judge who granted certain Indigenous communities rights over certain existing cities and towns, the land in certain existing cities and towns, whether it's the current rights or future rights or whatever it is, and title. The specific word was title. And so there's been a lot of speculation. Oh, it's City of Richmond. That's it. It was over the City of Richmond, which is one of the largest population centers in all of BC. It's part of the Greater Vancouver area. It's kind of like Mississauga. Imagine Mississauga. But they were given title over that entire city. So suddenly it begged the question of whether or not people who owned their houses actually owned the land on which their houses sat. And so there was a lot of talk about certain First Nations individuals claiming that the people who owned these houses were going to start having to pay leases to the First Nation and stuff like that. And whether or not they actually owned their land and stuff, and there's fear, a lot of fear over property values dipping, because now there's speculation over whether or not they could sell their houses, because a lot of this is up in the air. Because apparently the way that the language was worded, and I'm going to go into a video on this, so this is all just me kind of speculating here. I don't want anyone to think that this is definitive in what I'm saying, but it sounded like, a lot of people had a fear of their property values dipping, and I don't know if that's actually happened yet, because there's just no certainty over who owns the land now because of this court case. So, and the NDP government is taking a lot of heat from it, not just from BC, but from around Canada, because if this is the case and this is true, that is a huge, huge, huge violation of our First Amendment right, or not First Amendment, of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So our right to own property is being infringed on heavily in this case. And there's talks about expanding it as well. So, yeah, NDP's facing a lot of heat. That judge is facing a lot of heat. And First Nations communities are facing a lot of heat from other BC residents. So that's what I do know about it. Yeah, it was big for a while, and then you know how the news is. They move on to the next best thing, next big thing. And I don't think anyone's posting about it because nothing new's come of it yet. So, and from what I remember, because I did read the ruling, but it was a long time ago, and I just briefly skimmed over it. This has more to do with future, like the future, rather than current. I don't know if it has to do with like future considerations for like sales or something when it comes to the title, or what. That was what was ambiguous, is like, what do they mean by title, and like when does this take action, and things along that nature. So yeah, so there's more questions and answers regarding all these different things, and like I said, I might make a video on this in the future that gets into more detail. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I was planning on talking about in this live stream. I think that's everything. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun having you on. Yes. Thank you for joining. Yeah. Did you have fun, or was it kind of boring for you? Because I know you kind of lose track after a while. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're driving. Yeah. No, I was just going over press conferences and stuff. Okay, well. Yeah. We just chat, and then it's just opinions, and then we're going back and forth. And just so everyone knows, my sister, she's very intelligent. She holds me to account, and she makes sure that if I make a claim that she calls me out on my bullshit, basically. So, and that's what I appreciate about her. And that's why I'm going to try. She's actually the primary reason why I'm going to try my best to make sure that everything I say is factual. Because if I say anything that isn't, she's going to call me out on it. So I best make sure I'm being honest. Okay. Well, hopefully I can have you on as a guest in the future, because this was a lot of fun. And maybe one day we can get you and Dad on, or multiple people. Yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Okay. All right. Thanks for joining. And all right, everybody. I think this is going to be it. Thank you for joining the live stream. Bye, sister.